Hello, this is Rex from Recites, and for this video I have some poems about the universe for you today. And the first one is about the solar system, and it was written by a man named Kurt Chambers, and he says he wrote it for his children who were, I guess, 10 or 12 years old, so that they would learn something about the solar system. And you might notice that there's one thing that part of the poem that I quote that you can't make a connection to with the picture you see on the screen. But now when I finish the poem, I'm going to explain that and say a few words in general about the poem. And he has entitled this Our Solar System. However, he includes the earthly moon in the first stanza. He says, "The moon shines very bright, especially on a crisp, cool night. The sun is big and has the hots, and also is covered with little spots. Mercury is indeed quite small. Seen against the sun, it's a tiny ball. Venus is cloudy like a rainy day, but it's far too hot to go out and play. Earth is blue and warm and nice, and this is where we spend our life. Mars is next, oh so red. It has no life, it's completely dead. Next comes the asteroid belt. Between Mars and Jupiter, it's held. It was created by planets' collision and is marked by great precision. Next is Jupiter, the biggest of all, but really it's just a giant gaseous ball. Saturn comes next with its enormous ring. It's the solar system's great bling thing. Uranus always gets a laugh, but it's really not quite that daft. Neptune is next upon the list with its nearly invisible disk. And now we've come from very far from our friendly yellow star. So we come to Pluto, which some do say is not a planet anyway. Okay, now in this poem about the planets, I've inserted a 4-line verse about the asteroid belt, which has been ignored. And the sentence that you see on the board, Mercury, Venus, Earth markedly as Jupiter set reigning next to Pluto. This would take about 4 or 5 readings, thoughtful readings, to memorize this sentence, which gives the order of the planets from the sun. Now you notice the word as in there, which stands for the asteroid belt. Now I have seen quite a few poems and writings about the solar system, and almost none of them mention the asteroid belt. So they're leaving out about 10% of the material bodies of the solar system. And so this sentence includes that. And if you're interested at all in learning, if you don't know, the order of the planets and their distances from the sun, why this is a good way to start. Now, whereas the poem just now was about the solar system, I have the next poem that follows. The poem that follows is called Our Galactic Home, about the Milky Way, and I wrote this one myself. And so before I say the poem, though, I'd like to make a few comments about the picture that you see on the screen. The Milky Way is a rather typical galaxy out of the 200 billion in space. So the diameter of the Milky Way is 90,000 light years. A light year is approximately 6 trillion miles. So if you want to think of the diameter of the Milky Way in miles, you would have to multiply 6 trillion by 90,000, and you would have a lot of numbers, believe me. So let's forget that. Now the center of the galaxy of the Milky Way, therefore, is about half of that distance, about 45,000 light years. And if we come down to the lower portion, you see a red circle that marks our solar system. So our solar system is located near the bottom on one of the arms of the Milky Way. Now the arm of the Milky Way on which our sun and solar system resides itself is about 2,000 light years thick. And so I just mentioned those things because I referred to some of those statistics in the poem, and it won't be the first time that you have heard them. So here we go with our galactic home. Light year is a measure that has been coined to help us conceive the prizes of the universe. For example, the 200 billion stars in a galaxy must share the space with all of the other stars. So here we are in the Milky Way, our galactic home, with its innumerable sizes. And our sun proudly serves as the gentle and mellow medium of heavenly surprises, such as it orbits the center of the galaxy in a mere 225 million years at 136 miles a second, a speed which obviates the fears that the 26,000 light years from the center appears to be too much for our puny solar system with Sol as its gears to negotiate the 45,000 radius of our great wheel, and cannot with its small size with the gigantic universe deal. With a giant 200 billion star way extent and the 2,000 light year distance of the arm of Sol's star tent. In the words of Psalm 19 in the Old Testament, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. Now the last poem in this little series of 3 poems considers the universe as a whole with all of its 200 billion galaxies in addition to the Milky Way. And I wrote this one a couple of months ago myself, and I call this the Starry Sky. Universe, how did you get so broad and wide as to encompass time everlasting and all of space beside? The deity, who is reigning king, has done expertly that very thing, from creating 200 billion galaxies he flung into space, and 200 billion stars for each galaxy apace, to creating supplement bodies such as the earth, whose dwellers look up at the sky and think the heavens declare the glory of God. This last poem bears quite a resemblance in thought and content to a poem of Robert Service, which I did on a previous video called A Grain of Sand, in which he discusses the grandeurs of the universe. Well, I hope you've enjoyed these 3 little poems, and if you haven't done so yet, please subscribe below. And if you'd like a hard copy of these poems, because these last 2 exist only in my head and in my notes, and if you'll drop me a note with my email, trexrecites@gmail.com, I'll be glad to send you copies of these poems. Thank you. Bye.